Hello, my name is Katie Gow, and I'm going to be going over the Supreme Court case for Loving versus Virginia. So, we're going to talk a little bit about the case, the verdict, the bigger picture, relevance to now, all of that good stuff. So, now to start going over the case. The case of Loving versus Virginia is over an occurrence that happened to Mildred Jeter, a black woman, and Richard Loving, a white man, that were actually legally married in Washington, D.C. I believe they were going home to Virginia, and so when they came into Virginia, they were both arrested and convicted of violating Virginia's anti miscegenation laws, which prohibited interracial marriages. So, for the verdict reached a unanimous decision ruled by Chief Justice Earl Warren that viewed Virginia's anti-miscegenation laws as unconstitutional. So, for the bigger picture, what does this actually really mean? The ruling meant that interracial marriages were wrong or inappropriate seen by Virginia. Virginia and Virginia's laws thought interracial marriage was wrong and inappropriate. However, the ruling overturning that led to a civil rights movement of marriage regardless of race, which is also in the Constitution. So, what is the relevance to now? This case set the precedent for equal marriage rights regardless of race and interracial marriages, which is accepted worldwide. Mostly, we do have a few stragglers who believe that's not okay, but it is legal and it is okay. This case ultimately protected individual liberties and set the mood for years to come. So, for my secondary source, I found this from the UHD database, and it just gave me a more in-depth into the case and what actually happened. So I really did like this source. It doesn't really swing you like what's right, what's wrong. It just gives you all the facts up front. So I was able to learn a little bit more about the case, the ruling, all of that. So that was really good. Now, for my sources, in chapter 29 in the textbook, it goes over Loving versus Virginia, what happened. I actually really like the textbook because it actually did really go in depth over what happened and all of that, and mostly chapter 29 was all over that. And then the source provided, the Loving versus Virginia, 388 U.S. 1, 1967, of course, that one was provided. And then my secondary source, which is in Milestone Documents in American History, exploring primary sources that shaped America. So, pretty much just saying, in connection, I'm going to connect it to go back to my point over the civil rights movement. The ruling in Loving versus Virginia followed earlier civil rights movements and wins that actually happened. Like we talked about the Brown versus Board of Education in 1954, Civil Rights Acts in 1964, the Voting Rights Acts in 1965, and it symbolized, the final legal blow to Jim Crow laws, the final weapon against Jim Crow laws. Segregation, specifically in marriage law, since this one is talking about marriage. The Loving's resistance, like the Montgomery bus boycott, made them extremely, extremely important in civil rights figures, movements, and the case remains a milestone in the fight for racial inequality. Equality. Because everybody should be seen as equal, and that was the whole point of the civil rights movement. Everybody should be equal. Everybody should have the right and the freedom to marry who they want, regardless of race. And so now I'm going to go back into the verdict or actually the case, and give a little bit more of historical and legal context. So anti-miscegenation laws had existed in America for over 300 years, going back a very long time. 300 years is a very long time. And so the term comes from Abraham Lincoln's re-election campaign in 1864 as part of a racist hoax. in the mid 20th century, many states still like mostly enforce those laws, especially in the South, since that was more slavery driven. We had the cotton boom, all of that. So they were migrating more slaves. Slavery was more present and slavery was more accepted. And so only California and a few other states have started to repeal these laws. And so as of 1967, 16 states still had active anti-miscegenation laws, mostly in the South. But due to this ruling, they were gone and seen as unconstitutional, and it was the right way towards equality. And then that's it.